All right, look, I know what you're probably thinking, and a lot of you ask me this. How the fuck does he do what he does in a day? Which just to me... And look, I get it, to run a podcast or 2 podcasts, social media accounts, interact with people on social media, build a community as well at the same time as having a client-based business and a home life to balance all these things out. We're thinking he must have some kind of really serious organization in place. I am here to tell you I have none of that. So let's dig into how I go about what it is I do. Now, first things first, I don't have any kind of organization plan to create what I do or do what I do in a day, other than a general kind of map that I plan out my hours in a day. Now, I've done this video on my G'day Frank page. It's in an IGTV video if you want to have a look at that. I play with my kids' blocks. But the general idea of it is to wake up at 6 when my little man comes in and knocks on my door and says, "Dada, I want to get up." And so we spend some time on the couch. I'm doing my Instagram kind of stuff at the same time as him having his breakfast and watching his morning TV cartoon shows, which he's thoroughly enjoying. But then come 9 o'clock, it's into the office, into my office room here at home, and it's working on client work, as well as doing things like business related stuff of accounting and following up on emails or calls or contracts, or just weird kind of business related stuff that is fairly mundane on top of the client work at the same time. Now, because I do work at home, I do have the interaction with family between my wife and my son if he's here and not at daycare. But come midday, it's then time for lunch, favorite meal of the day, and it's sitting down to just stop everything for a little bit and enjoy that experience, watching YouTube. Afternoon time is generally when I really kick into gear for my client work, and my inspiration time generally comes between 4 and 5 o'clock, which is really annoying because that's when I get on a roll. And then by 5 to 6 o'clock, it's tools down, and hardline 6 definitely to have dinner. Usually I am cooking if my wife isn't, and so I'm having to prepare a meal for my family at the same time then, once tools it down, and interacting with them, sitting down for that meal. And by 7 o'clock, it's bath time for little dude, and then bedtime. And by 7:30, I am back in my office to do my work on social media. Now, that might sound really freaking boring, especially to keep working at the end of the day when you're just like, you know what, fuck this shit. I am not doing any more work. And believe you me, I sometimes feel the same way. But I've come to a point where I really enjoy this stuff. And it's why I do so much of it, and why you see me everywhere in different mediums around to do this kind of work. Now, in terms of the creation of all this stuff, now I've had a couple of people reach out and ask, how do you create all this stuff in that kind of timeline? And does it require a lot of pre-planning? Now, I don't really pre-plan anything further than just writing something on the notes app of my phone or on the whiteboard in my office for ideas of what to talk about next. Now, if you have a topic like branding, like I do for my G'day Frank page, or design and business-related stuff for G'day Design Life like I do, then there's an endless plethora of stuff you could be talking about. And it can be either something from your own opinion, a shared opinion, adding your 2 cents to the conversation, because we don't also need to be thought leaders. We can just be thought contributors, which is something I've touched on my G'day Frank content once. It's taking that pressure off to realize that something rather than nothing is better. And it doesn't need to be the best thing in the world, because sometimes I've found that the stuff that I think might not do so well does. And it's not something that you can predict, but putting something out there that you believe is of value to somebody else is the game of creating content. And it's to show people who you are, what you do, what you're about, what impact it is you have on businesses like theirs, or in the design field that we all live in as designers, to better ourselves as designers. Then that's the ball game right there. It's a game of attention, which is very, shallow in its sense, because you're all fighting for the same attention from each other. But think about this, who is your target audience? Because this is where I think we're all getting confused with social media, especially in the terms of content creation. Now, for many designers that will send me or DM me a post or tag me in a post that has no relevance to me whatsoever, I'm not, mentioned in it or anything like that, and it's usually something related about what I do anyway, about branding or something related to design, and I message that person back and go, okay, cool, that great post, looks great, or whatever, if that's the feedback you're looking for. But I then tend to ask a question of, if you're creating this content for other designers, what is that doing for you as a business owner? If you're running your own business, who are you trying to attract? And, obviously 95% or more times is that person saying, I want to attract clients, I want to get business out of Instagram. And I come back and say, do you think that is going to happen if you're creating content for people like you? And obviously the response back is like, yeah, you're probably right, maybe I should. And it's like, okay, cool. That's how I have treated Instagram from day dot, creating my content since March last year. I got into that game of doing it nearly daily. It got to a point where it was daily, and that was full on, and I've taken a step back since to posting maybe once or twice a week for my business page there. And I couldn't see anyone else doing the same thing, of creating content for a specific person in mind that wasn't a designer, so a specific client or a client in general, rather than a fellow designer, to share that same knowledge with other designers. And what you'll find is that you put content out for a client and you'll still receive the attention of your fellow creative. It's just osmosis. We appreciate each other's opinions, the way we approach things, our process, who we are, all these kinds of things is how I've built up a following that is like 95% designers on my business page. I've created the content with a client in mind, but received the attention of designers inadvertently. So don't feel like if you need to create content for designers to stand out and get the attention of those that lead the conversation. They'll find you, they'll come across you in some way, shape or form if you put out good stuff that is for a higher purpose other than to create content for your fellow designer. Now, having said that though, you can still create content for your fellow designer. There's nothing wrong with that if that's the purpose of your page. If the purpose of your page is to get work, you know what you need to do. You need to post who you are, what you're about, what you can do, what you've done, the opinions of others, and the opinions of yourself. That's pretty much it. So showing off who you are through photos, video, your opinions in captions, your own quotes, or sharing your opinions on other people's views on things of what you do. Showing the impact of what you do as a result of your actions, or case studies of other people doing what you do to show that impact to a particular client that you're trying to talk to. Now, if it's something that's related about you and you want to communicate yourself in a verbal fashion or audible fashion or visual fashion, whatever it is, if it's video or audio or written word, show your true personality. Don't make up some kind of persona. Now, what you might think is, do I always look like this or sound like this as an individual? Me, Frank, I'm talking about. Hell no, because away from the camera, I'm a bit more reserved. I'm not so out there. I'm not so, I guess confident maybe. And it's something to say that this feels fun to me. This feels right to me. This feels, it's come to a point where I feel comfortable doing this stuff and quite enjoy it, which being in your element with something, and you'll know what I mean when you're around friends that make you feel comfortable and heard and all that kind of stuff, that's where you start to shine and that's where you start to enjoy yourself. This is that for me right here. I do the same with my friends as well, but right here is where it's at. And to the point where my wife has said to me just today, said, you are so much different to when I first met you. You're such a different person. And I was like, oh geez, dear, do you still love me? And she said, yeah, of course, but you're not afraid to share your opinions and put yourself out there and do all these different things that you do. And it's just so different to see. And even other friends have commented that go, you don't usually talk like this in person. I said, well, I do feel confident where I am now. And that's why doing more and more of this is what I highly encourage if it's something that you're into doing. Now, getting in front of a camera is bloody hard. I will tell you that, to the point where I went to the stage of putting myself out there so much to vlog. working myself up in terms of getting the gear, doing little bits and pieces of video here and there, all to have the goal of going out one day with camera in hand on the Joey Pod, Casey Neistat style YouTube vlogger, and document my day. And I did that in Sydney City, down the streets of George Street and Pitt Street and down at Circular Quay, looking at the harbour and just not giving a shit. Because at the end of the day, people are going to look at you and go, oh, look at that guy's camera. Well, that guy's doing something interesting. And that's kind of it. That's all that's going on in their heads. If it's going to be like, oh, what the hell's that guy doing? You know, what the fuck? You know, seriously? Why would you be filming yourself? What a loser. That's on them, not you. You don't even know what that's, you know, going through their head. And it's not something you need to think about. And that's what I got past. And you just get out there and do it because you enjoy it. Now, a few ways to get around that is, if you want to do video, think of somebody down the barrel of that lens. Like I'm talking to you right now, like you know who you are. You are that person that I am connecting with. I've got a specific person in mind right in the center of my lens, and I know their face because I've met them in person. I engage with them quite a bit during the week, and that's who I'm talking to. And that makes me feel comfortable more so than just looking at the Sony badge on top of the lens. You know, that's the kind of thing to make it personal, because you want to make it personal. You want to be able to connect with somebody, not everybody. And that's why I say try and find a direct audience to target, because it will influence the way you speak, both, you know, through your text and all that kind of stuff, through your visual, through your audio if you send audio messages or do a podcast. And then it translates even into things like hashtags of who you are targeting those hashtags. Now, I used to use hashtags just to have all the different branding and logo related things and thinking that'll attract other people and blah, 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 but it just attracts other designers. To the point where now I'm changing my tack to niche down or niche down. Niche, please! But I think in that respect, you then have an idea exactly who you're trying to target. You know, who to find, who to target your message to, and work that way rather than be, you know, fairly general. There's nothing wrong with being general though, because you are unique and that's your own niche, being yourself. But to even go even deeper than that is something that you'll find a lot of people talk about, especially in the higher up tiers of business related creativity, to niche down into something. And I would encourage you to do so. It's something I'm doing now, and I'm going into the tech space of branding. So how branding can help people in tech around the world. There's a lot of different ways, obviously. Some of the things I'm doing is joining this $1.80 kind of strategy that Gary Vee came up with to put my 2 cents onto people that have created content in that space, using several different hashtags to put myself out there and engage with that community rather than just the design community. What most people think about though is, when you create content for a specific audience in mind, that you won't be able to engage with those that you want to engage with, being fellow designers. And I'm here to tell you that you still do that, because there's things called comments on people's content or on your content. There's direct messages, you know, there's other people's profiles that you can follow. So there's endless opportunities to be able to connect with those that you want to connect with. So pretty much all the people that I follow, apart from potential clients or clients that I currently have, are designers, because they're the people I talk to on the day-to-day to connect with. So that's how you can still garner the people and the attention that you want to have, additional to the people that you need to attract for your business through the one page. You don't need to separate things, that's not necessary. You just need to target one particular audience for your content, but then be social with the people that you want to be social with. If it's with a potential other clients, great. That's totally up to you. It's just working how you want to work to have that ROI for your business. Now, what I will say as well about ROI is that it's a long-term game creating all this stuff that I do. I don't expect to have sales overnight. Now, for me, in terms of Instagram, the effort that I was putting into that of 8 months long of content nearly daily, I had one client out of it. And it was a very good paying client out of it, but it was the one client that I've got out of Instagram. And I didn't expect even that, to be perfectly honest. Whereas many people might think otherwise. Like, they're going to put all this content up and they're going to get all this engagement from people, and everyone's going to be like, yes, I want it. I want what you have. I want what you do. I don't care how much it is. I'll sign on the dotted line. It doesn't happen that way. You need to plant seeds, which is why every now and again I will get onto Instagram instead of just replying to comments or messages or interacting with other people's content like designers. I will explore and do a deep dive into other business accounts out there and look at their content and do the whole $1.80 strategy of leaving the 2 cents, as I mentioned before. It's doing these things that builds up that attraction level. And it doesn't apply just to Instagram as well. The same on LinkedIn, same on Facebook, on the web, whatever it is, the way that you find these people that you want to create content for, interact with, and engage with, all that kind of stuff. Now, like, to go into planning more of how I do this stuff, I have the whiteboard in my office, I have the notes app on my phone, and that's about it. I started my business off with Trello. It just added an extra half an hour to an hour of my day just filling in tiles, and I was just like, look, is this really necessary? If I'd have everything organic and it works for me, then why not? Now, it might not work for you. If it's organization you need in your day, which I see a lot of other social media standouts like Diana Gets Social, for instance, she maps out her stuff, weeks and weeks in advance, which I highly envy from someone that doesn't do it. But this is what works for me. It's off the cuff. It's what I feel works at the time, what I'm interested in at the time, and what I'm hearing from my fellow designers from G'day Design Life perspective, or what I'm trying to talk about in the space of tech now for G'day Frank. So it might be at the start of the week I'm thinking of some ideas as I go of things that I could talk about, or cover, or present, or have some fun with, all these kind of things as my day goes along, where something sparks. It's either a conversation or another post I see that inspires me to create something of a similar tone or cover something in a different way. All these kind of things build up and up and up and up in my head, that I write down these ideas, and I don't have a crazy amount of ideas. They'll come as they go, and sometimes there's just like nothing there, and you're like, to the point where you're just like, do I even bother posting? And it's a double-edged sword. Do you post just to keep consistent, or do you post because it's going to be quality and it's worth something? Look, what I've found is consistency through posting daily. When I did it, it became a habitual act to just put something out there, and it didn't need to be anything groundbreaking. It was sometimes just sharing a quote from someone that inspired me and putting my own 2 cents onto it. Or it was sharing a photo of myself and talking about a bit about something in my day that was related to what I do. Little things like this to build a content plethora of stuff that people can look back at over time and see what it is you're about and grow a connection with yourself over time. That's branding in the long-term sense. So to do all this kind of stuff is how you come up with different ideas over time, and picking a content area that you could talk about to the end of time. That's the big key there. And you just create content because you enjoy putting it out there and seeing what other people think and see if it's helpful or valuable to other people. Now, from an organization standpoint, I'm generally just doing the content at night. So the posts that I put up, if it's the carousels or editing a podcast or a video like this one, it generally happens the night before, unless it needs a little bit more time to edit. I might do it in the bits I have during the middle of the day where I should be doing some client work, or I have gaps in client work time. And it just works in that time for me because I get things done quickly. I get into a mode of work in that way, and it happens that way. Now, in terms of actually recording the stuff, like right now, it's a Monday, and I'm putting this out on Wednesday, obviously, which you're watching it now, either on Wednesday or Thursday. And from there, I then sit on it until I need to edit, and then go from there. With podcasts, it's a little bit more planning because you need to organize the schedule of the person you're talking with. In my case, I have guests on my shows, and so we need to have a little bit more planning there to get that stuff done. But it doesn't require too much work, and it can fit within the times of your client work or any other things you need to get done in a day. So that's how I'm organizing that. Again, it doesn't require too much more than a calendar, a notes app in your phone, or a whiteboard or a notebook. That's kind of it in a very low tech sense. But there's one big point I want to kind of make about doing all this kind of stuff, is that don't feel like you need to do it because everybody else is doing it. Like, I see plenty of accounts that form the same model as other people have done. Like, I've followed the whole carousel trend of creating content because that's what creates the best engagement. It's what Instagram rewards, and it's a whole game of attention. Now, if you're feeling like you need to be as good as somebody else, I would highly suggest you don't, because you are not going to do yourself justice or do the effort justice, and you'll be doing yourself a massive disservice, because it's not what makes you unique. Do it in the way that makes sense to you, and it could be just picking up a phone and writing in a note on your phone, recording the screen, and then posting that as a piece of content. Because if the idea is what sells it, that's all that matters. It's just getting that idea out that you have in your head, to share that, and just be a person that shares these things with other people, to create the conversation, to create information that we all want and we crave, because otherwise we wouldn't be on here consuming this stuff. But to you guys, I know this is something that you can do, because if this peanut head of a bloke can do all this kind of stuff, I know you can too, because you're just as creative as me, and I think a lot of you are way more creative than I am, and you'll get to a point where you just need a little bit of confidence that compounds and compounds and compounds until you have the size of a head of a peanut like this guy, and you're creating content that you thoroughly enjoy and people connect with, rather than just putting out your work. If you put your face to the name of your business, people can connect with that. If you put your own sense of tone of voice into the captions that you write about your content, and tell me why you created this and how it was made and what it is you do and how you do it and your opinion on what you do, that creates some social connection. So I have 100% confidence that you can do this. It's whether or not you're going to do it today, tomorrow, or a week from now. I think it's inevitable, because a lot of you ask me about this stuff, and I can see you wanting to do more. So let's get out there and do more. See ya.